The space station was full of life, crowded with merchants, soldiers, and travelers. Screens flickered with news updates, drones hovered above selling goods, and voices mixed together in a storm of noise. An old man walked quietly through it all, leaning on a cane, his steps slow but steady. His hair was white, his face marked with lines of age, and his back slightly bent, but his eyes still carried the sharpness of someone who had once seen too much. To most who passed by, he was invisible, just another forgotten veteran of wars no one wanted to remember. He paused to rest near a pillar, watching the flow of people. His breathing was heavy, his chest rising and falling with effort. He had come to the station for medical treatment, nothing more. No one looked at him. No one cared. It had been many years since anyone spoke his name with respect. His medals had been left behind in a dusty box on Earth. To the galaxy, he was just an old relic. Then, from the crowd, a figure appeared. A young alien woman, tall and graceful, with pale silver skin that caught the glow of the station lights. Her eyes, bright and sharp like polished steel, locked onto him. For a moment she froze in disbelief. Then, with sudden urgency, she pushed through the crowd. People moved aside, murmuring in confusion as she came closer. When she stopped in front of him, she dropped to one knee. Her voice trembled, but her words carried clearly over the noise of the station. "It's an honor to serve you again, Captain." The crowd went silent. The old man's eyes widened. He looked down at her face, searching for recognition. Memories, long buried, stirred like ghosts in his mind. 15 years ago, he had seen that face, but younger, frightened, covered in ash and tears. She had been a child then, clinging to him as fire rained from the skies. He had lifted her into his ship with his own arms, ignoring the orders in his ear to leave the civilians behind. "You," his voice cracked with disbelief. "It can't be." Her head lifted, and her eyes shone with unshed tears. "You saved me. You saved my people when no one else would. I swore if I lived, I would find you again. And now—" She lowered her gaze again, voice breaking with emotion. "Now I will not leave your side." Whispers rippled through the onlookers. A decorated alien warrior kneeling to a frail human? The sight was almost unthinkable. Some frowned in disgust, others in curiosity, but no one dared interrupt. The old man felt dozens of eyes on him, and it made his chest tighten. He had not wanted attention. He had not wanted anyone to remember. Slowly, he reached out a trembling hand and touched her shoulder. "Stand," he said softly. "People are staring." She rose, but her back was straight, proud, and defiant. Her armor gleamed under the station lights, marked with the symbols of rank. She was not a servant anymore. She was a soldier, respected and feared. Yet in front of him, she bowed her head with the same loyalty she had shown as a child. The old man's mind spun. He remembered the battle, the burning colony, the screams. He had disobeyed orders, taken his ship into danger, and rescued as many civilians as he could. For that, he had been punished. His career ended, his honor stained by accusations of recklessness. But this young woman, standing before him now, was proof that what he did had mattered. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "I'm no captain anymore. I'm just an old man." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "To me, you will always be captain." The words struck him harder than any weapon could. His throat tightened, his heart aching with a mixture of pride and sorrow. He wanted to tell her to go, to live her life without being chained to his broken past. But deep inside, a forgotten warmth stirred. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to him like that. So long since anyone had looked at him with respect instead of pity. The silence of the crowd grew heavier. More aliens gathered, whispering to each other, pointing at him. He felt the weight of judgment pressing down, and he hated it. He wanted to disappear. Yet beside him, the alien girl stood tall, unshaken, her eyes scanning the crowd with the focus of a guard ready to protect him. "Why now?" he asked finally, his voice low, almost a plea. "After all these years?" She leaned closer, her voice lowered so only he could hear. "Because they are coming for you, the ones who never forgave what you did. I could not let them find you alone." His body stiffened. The words sent a chill down his spine. He thought he had been forgotten, left to fade quietly into the shadows of history, but enemies had long memories, perhaps longer than friends. For a long moment, he stared into her determined eyes. She was no longer the frightened child he remembered. She was a warrior, hardened by years of battle, yet she still looked at him with the same unshaken loyalty. The old man sighed, gripping his cane tighter. Around them, the whispers grew louder, the stares sharper. But he felt something he had not felt in years, a spark of purpose. She had returned after 15 years, not by accident, but by fate. And if danger was coming, perhaps the galaxy was not done with him yet. The girl stepped closer, her hand resting gently on his arm, steadying him. "I will serve you until my last breath, Captain, just as you once saved me." His lips parted, but no words came. His heart pounded like it had when he was young, when warships blazed across the stars and choices had to be made in fire and blood. He was no longer a commander, but as her words sank in, a single truth echoed inside him. The past had come back, and it would not let him go. The old man sat with the alien girl in a quiet corner of the station's docking bay, away from the curious eyes of the crowd. The hum of engines echoed in the background as ships came and went, but neither of them spoke for a while. His hands shook slightly as he rested them on his cane, his thoughts drifting to memories he had tried to bury. She watched him in silence, patient, like a soldier awaiting orders. Finally, he broke the silence. 15 years, and now you stand before me, a warrior. Tell me, what did you see in me that day that makes you still bow to an old man? Her eyes softened, though her posture remained straight. I saw someone who risked everything for people who were not his own. I saw a man who chose compassion over orders. My people called it madness. I called it courage. He shook his head slowly. Courage? No, it was foolishness. I broke command protocol. I endangered my crew. They stripped me of my rank and sent me home in disgrace. His voice was bitter, but beneath it was pain. The galaxy doesn't remember me as a hero. They remember me as a man who threw away honor for strangers. The girl leaned closer, her voice sharp. That is because they only see politics. They did not see the fire consuming our homes. They did not hear our cries. You were there, Captain. You came when no one else would. Her words pulled him back into the past. He could see it again, the colony burning under enemy bombardment, smoke rising into the endless black sky. His orders had been clear. Avoid the colony, retreat to safe space, and regroup. But he had ignored those orders. He had turned his ship toward the flames. His crew had argued, begged him to reconsider. But he had looked at the transmission screen, at the faces of terrified civilians, children clutching their parents, and he had made his choice. He remembered the chaos when his ship descended into the storm. Buildings collapsed under bombardment. Fires spread uncontrollably. The landing bay was filled with screaming civilians, desperate to escape. He had shouted at his soldiers to lower the ramp and open the cargo hold. "As many as we can carry," he had ordered. She had been among them, a small alien child barely able to walk through the smoke, her skin smeared with ash. She had clung to her mother's hand until an explosion tore them apart. He remembered seeing her stumble, her tiny arms reaching out as soldiers pushed through the chaos. No one stopped. No one cared. But he did. He had dropped his rifle, run forward through the fire, and lifted her into his arms. She had cried into his chest, trembling, whispering words he couldn't understand. But her eyes, he had never forgotten those eyes. The old man closed his eyes, gripping his cane. "I thought you wouldn't even remember me. You were so young." "I remember everything," she said firmly. "I remember the sound of your voice shouting for us to run. I remember the way you shielded me when debris fell. I remember how you carried me aboard when others tried to push me aside." Her voice cracked for a moment, but she steadied herself. "When my mother didn't make it, you held me until I could breathe again. No one had ever done that for me. That day, you became more than a soldier in my eyes. You became my protector." His throat tightened. He remembered the punishment that followed. His commanders had raged when they learned he had filled his ship with refugees instead of following the retreat order. They accused him of recklessness, of disobedience, of risking human lives for aliens. His medals had been stripped, his rank removed. For years, he had carried the shame, hearing whispers of betrayal behind his back. He had lived with the belief that maybe they were right, that maybe he had thrown away everything for nothing. But here she was, living proof that it had not been nothing. "You should hate me," he muttered, his eyes distant. "Your life was destroyed that day. Your people scattered. I saved some, but I could not save all." She stepped closer, her expression fierce. "You saved enough. You saved me. And because of that, I swore I would rise, that I would not waste the life you gave me. I trained, I fought, and I carried your name with me. Among my people, they call me the captain's child. Every victory I have earned is because of the spark you lit in me that day." The old man's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to argue, to deny her, but her words were like a blade cutting through years of guilt. He saw the strength in her eyes, the fire in her stance. She was not lying. She had built her entire life on that moment, and now she stood before him, a soldier forged from his act of defiance. He exhaled heavily, almost trembling. "I never wanted you to fight. I wanted you to live in peace." "There is no peace without sacrifice," she answered. "You taught me that, and now I am here because you are in danger. They whisper that assassins are moving. They say enemies from the war have not forgotten what you did. I could not let them reach you alone." His eyes snapped toward hers. "Assassins?" The word tasted bitter. He had thought the galaxy had forgotten him, but perhaps not everyone had. She nodded firmly. "They call you the man who humiliated them. They call you the traitor who put aliens above humans. They want to erase your name forever, but they will not touch you while I still breathe." The old man's hands trembled. He looked at her and felt a strange mix of fear and pride. 15 years had passed, and he had lived quietly, carrying his guilt in silence. But the past had not let go. The galaxy had not forgotten. And now, standing before him was the child he had saved, grown into a warrior who refused to abandon him. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his choices in a different light. He was not just a disgraced veteran. He was the man who had given life to someone who now stood ready to defend him. The fire in her words lit something deep within him, something he thought was long dead. He looked at her and whispered, "If they are coming for me, then I will not run." She smiled faintly, the expression sharp with determination. "Then you will not stand alone." The old man did not sleep that night. He sat in the dim quarters of the space station, his cane resting against the wall, his hands folded tightly, as if trying to hold together the thoughts running wild in his head. The alien girl stood near the door, her back straight, eyes scanning every shadow as though danger might step through at any moment. Her presence reminded him of old times, when he commanded soldiers who would not rest until he gave the order. Except now, he was not a captain anymore, and she was no soldier under his command. Yet she watched over him with the same loyalty as if the war had never ended. The hum of the station was constant, but beneath it he felt something else, a weight, like unseen eyes following him. He had lived long enough to recognize when he was being hunted. She had not lied. Enemies were moving in the dark, and they wanted him. "You don't need to stay," he told her at last, his voice tired. "You've built a life, a name. Don't waste it protecting an old man who can't fight anymore." She turned her head sharply, her silver eyes catching the dim light. "I did not come here by accident. I came because the hunters are real, and they will not stop. If they find you, they will make your death slow, and they will erase what you did. I will not allow that." His lips pressed into a thin line. He wanted to argue, but deep down he knew she was right. The war might have ended, but hate lingered longer than peace. He had humiliated powerful enemies by saving those civilians. To them, it was not heroism. It was betrayal. They had been waiting, watching, and now that he was old and frail, they had chosen their moment. A sharp sound outside the door broke his thoughts, a hiss, like metal sliding against metal. The girl reacted instantly, her weapon drawn, her body tense. The old man's heart raced. He remembered that sound from long ago, the whisper of blades carried by assassins. The door creaked as if someone tested its strength. She stepped forward, blocking his view, her weapon steady. Then the sound faded, leaving only silence. Minutes passed before she relaxed slightly, though her eyes never lost their sharpness. "They're closer than I thought," she said in a low voice. "We cannot stay here." His hands trembled as he pushed himself up, leaning on his cane. "Where would we go?" Her jaw tightened. "Anywhere but here. I know of a freighter docked 2 levels down. Its captain owes me a favor. If we leave now, we can get clear before they close the net." He stared at her, torn. His body ached with every step, his lungs burned from years of strain. He was no longer the man who once led charges into fire. Yet she looked at him with expectation, as though he could still be that man. "I'm not the captain you remember," he whispered. Her answer was firm, almost fierce. Then let me be your sword. You do not need to fight. You only need to walk beside me. I swore I would protect you, and I will. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the words sink into him. Perhaps he was too old to fight, but he was not too old to walk. Not too old to face what was coming. Slowly, he nodded. They moved through the dim corridors of the station, the girl guiding him with sharp glances at every corner. She walked like a shadow, her steps silent, her weapon ready. He followed, his cane tapping softly against the floor. Every sound seemed louder than it should. Every figure in the distance felt like a threat. At one crossing, he caught sight of two men watching them. Their eyes lingered too long, their hands hidden beneath their coats. His breath caught, but the girl placed a hand on his shoulder and steered him away before they could act. She was calm, but her eyes told him she had seen the danger too. "Hunters," she murmured. "We have little time." They reached the docking level. The smell of fuel and metal filled the air, and the hum of engines vibrated through the walls. Ships of all sizes lined the bay, their crews shouting orders as cargo was loaded. Among them stood a worn freighter, its hull scratched and patched with mismatched plates. The girl led him quickly toward it, but before they reached the ramp, shadows moved. Figures stepped out from behind crates, their faces hidden beneath masks, their weapons glinting under the harsh lights. The old man froze. There were too many of them. One of the masked figures spoke, his voice rough. "Captain, or should I say, former captain, we've waited a long time for this." The girl shifted, her body in front of him, her weapon raised. "You'll wait longer still." The assassins laughed, their steps closing in. The old man's chest tightened, his grip on the cane unsteady. For a moment, fear threatened to crush him. But then he looked at the girl, standing firm, unshaken, ready to fight an army for him. Something inside him stirred, something he thought was gone. The spirit of command, the spark of leadership. His voice came out steady, stronger than he expected. "To the ship! Move!" The girl reacted instantly, pushing him toward the ramp as blaster fire erupted. Sparks flew as shots slammed into metal around them. She fired back, precise and deadly, cutting down the first assassin who dared step closer. The old man stumbled up the ramp, each step burning his legs, but he kept moving. Behind him, her shouts and the crack of weapons filled the air. The freighter's engines roared to life. The ramp began to close, just as she leapt aboard, her armor scorched, but her eyes blazing with victory. The assassins fell back, their prey slipping from their grasp. Inside the freighter, the old man collapsed into a seat, his chest heaving. She stood beside him, watching the stars appear as the ship lifted from the station. "You see?" she said quietly, almost smiling. "They may hunt you, but they will not catch you, not while I live." He looked at her, his breath still ragged, and for the first time in many years he felt the fire of survival burn inside him again. The hunters had come, but he was not alone. And as the stars stretched into the long trails of faster-than-light travel, he knew the fight was only beginning. The freighter drifted into the cold silence of space, its patched hull creaking as if it struggled against every mile. Inside, the hum of the engines filled the narrow corridors. The old man sat heavily in a chair, his breath slow, his cane resting against his knee. The alien girl stood near him, wiping the scorch marks from her armor, her weapon placed carefully on the table within reach. The cabin lights flickered, throwing shadows across her sharp features. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. "You risked your life back there. For me. Why?" His voice was rough, almost accusing, but beneath it was something softer, confusion. She looked at him without hesitation. "Because I owe you everything. You saved me once. Now it is my turn." He shook his head, his hands trembling slightly. "That was years ago. You don't owe me anything. I was just a soldier doing what I thought was right." Her lips pressed together, and she stepped closer. "No, you weren't just doing your duty. You broke orders. You saved people no one else would. You saved me." She placed her hand lightly on her chest. "That choice gave me life. It gave me the chance to become who I am now. And because of that, I swore an oath. Not to your army, not to your government, to you." Her words struck him harder than the gunfire from earlier. He looked at her, truly looked. She was not the frightened child he had once carried out of the flames. She had become a warrior, her every movement steady with discipline, her gaze unshaken. Yet beneath that strength was something else. devotion, unbroken by time or distance. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling of the freighter. Memories of the past pressed against him again. The court-martial, the humiliation, the long years of silence. He had believed his actions were forgotten, swallowed by history. But here she stood, proof that what he had done still lived on. "You speak like I'm still your captain," he said quietly. "But I'm not. I'm just an old man running from ghosts." She knelt in front of him suddenly, her head bowed, her hand resting on the floor in a gesture of loyalty. "Then let me be your shield. You don't have to fight anymore. I will fight for you. My oath is yours until my last breath." His chest tightened. The weight of her words felt heavy, almost unbearable. He wanted to push her away, to tell her she was wasting her life. But he couldn't. Deep inside, something long buried flickered back to life. The memory of command, of responsibility, of bonds forged in fire. Slowly, he reached out, his fingers brushing her shoulder. "Stand up," he said, his voice softer than before. "I don't deserve this loyalty. But if you truly wish to stay, I won't send you away." She rose, her eyes shining with quiet pride. The freighter shuddered as it entered the emptiness between systems. The captain of the ship, a rough trader with cybernetic eyes, entered the cabin. "We'll be drifting through silent lanes for a while," he said. "Less chance of being tracked. But your pursuers won't give up so easily." The old man nodded, but the girl's eyes narrowed. "Let them come," she said. "They'll find more than they expect." When the trader left, silence returned. The old man studied her again, this time not as a ghost from his past, but as someone who had carved her own path. "Tell me," he asked, "what became of you after that day? After I left you on your world?" Her gaze softened as old memories surfaced. "I was taken in by the survivors, but life was hard. Many hated humans for what happened. They said your people abandoned us. I defended you, even when they called me a fool. I joined the military to prove myself. Every battle, every trial, I thought of you. I told myself I had to become strong enough so that if I ever saw you again, you would not see a helpless child. You would see a warrior worthy to stand beside you." The old man's throat tightened. He had thought of her sometimes in quiet nights, wondered if she had lived or died, but he never imagined she had built her whole life around his memory. "You should have lived for yourself," he whispered. "I did," she replied. "This is who I am, and this is what I chose." Her voice carried no hesitation. It was not the blind devotion of a child. It was the firm choice of someone who had walked through years of pain and chosen loyalty anyway. The ship rattled again as alarms beeped faintly in the cockpit. He leaned forward, his old instincts sparking. "We're being followed?" The captain's voice came from the intercom. "A scout ship on our tail. Might just be pirates, or might be the ones looking for you." The girl moved instantly, her weapon in her hands. "Then we fight if we must." The old man placed a hand on her arm, stopping her. His eyes, though weary, carried the steel of the commander he once was. "We will fight, yes, but we will fight smart." She looked at him, surprised, and for a moment she saw not the frail veteran, but the captain who had once defied orders to save lives. The fire had not left him completely. It still burned, hidden beneath years of silence. Her lips curved in a faint smile. "Then lead, Captain. I will follow." His heart ached at the word. Captain. It had been so long since anyone had spoken it with respect. And yet, hearing it from her, he felt something stir inside, a reminder that he was not entirely finished. The freighter drifted deeper into space, the hunter's shadow growing closer. But for the first time in years, the old man did not feel alone. Beside him stood a warrior forged from his own defiance, carrying his legacy forward. She was not just his protector. She was proof that his choices mattered. As the stars stretched before them, he knew the fight ahead would be dangerous. Yet, with her oath renewed, he felt a strange strength returning. He was not only running from his past anymore. He was walking toward something new, something he thought he had lost forever. The freighter touched down on the dusty surface of a frontier colony, its engines coughing as if tired from the escape. The old man stepped out slowly, leaning on his cane, the dry wind brushing against his face. Around him, the colony stretched out, rusted buildings, half-working lights, and people moving with guarded eyes. It was the kind of place where secrets were kept and betrayals were bought with a single coin. The alien girl walked beside him, her hand resting close to her weapon, her gaze sharp as a hawk's. She was not fooled by the calm surface of this settlement. She knew danger could be hiding anywhere. They had come here hoping for allies. The old man once had friends in places like this: traders, mercenaries, old soldiers who owed him favors. But 15 years was a long time. He was not sure if loyalty had survived the years, or if time had rotted it away. They entered a low building, its walls smelling of metal and smoke. Inside, shadows moved, faces of men and women who once fought under his command. For a brief moment, he felt a spark of recognition. Some smiled, some whispered, and one or two even gave respectful nods. He thought maybe, just maybe, the past had not been entirely lost. "Captain?" A rough voice greeted him. A man stepped forward, broad-shouldered with scars across his face. "We thought you were dead, and now here you are, walking into our colony." His words were filled with surprise, but also something else, a weight the old man could not name yet. The old man gave a faint smile. "Not dead yet, and I need your help. There are hunters after me, old enemies who won't let the past rest." The man nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the alien girl beside him. "I see you found company." His tone held a trace of disdain, but he said nothing more about it. Instead, he gestured for them to sit. Food and drink were brought, though the old man noticed how some of his former comrades whispered among themselves, their eyes flicking to him and then away. The alien girl did not sit. She remained standing near him, her body tense, her hand never far from her weapon. She felt the unease in the air. She felt the way the room shifted when the old man spoke, the way loyalty was mixed with doubt. He tried to speak to them, to remind them of old battles they had fought together, of the bond they once shared. His voice carried the weight of memories, how they had stood side by side against impossible odds, how they had trusted each other with their lives. For a moment, some of them softened, nodding as if those days were still alive in their hearts. But then, the scarred man leaned forward, his eyes cold. "Tell me, Captain, why should we help you now? When you turned your back on orders, when your choices cost us our careers, our names, our lives, we followed you once. And for what? For disgrace?" The words cut deep. The old man's chest tightened, his voice caught in his throat. He wanted to argue, to explain, but guilt weighed him down. He remembered their faces in the court. He remembered how many of them had lost everything after standing beside him. The alien girl stepped forward sharply. Her voice was cold and sharp as steel. "He saved lives. He saved my people when no one else dared. You call it disgrace, I call it honor." The room shifted. Some looked away, uncomfortable, while others glared at her with anger. The scarred man slammed his hand against the table. "Honor? Do you know what we lost? Do you know what we suffered while you rebuilt your life among your kind?" His voice rose. "We bled for him, and he left us to carry the shame." The old man's hands shook as he gripped his cane. "I never forgot what you sacrificed," he said softly. "I thought time would heal it. I thought." His words trailed, heavy with sorrow. But before he could continue, the sound of boots filled the room. Doors slammed open. Armed figures poured in, their weapons gleaming. The assassins had arrived. The scarred man stood, but instead of fighting, he raised his hand. "Here he is," he said coldly. "The traitor you wanted. We've kept him warm for you." The old man's heart sank. Betrayal. The people he once trusted had handed him over. He should have expected it, but still, the pain cut deeper than any blade. The assassins stepped forward, surrounding them. The alien girl moved instantly, her body between the old man and the enemies, her weapon drawn. Her voice was low, dangerous. "You'll have to kill me first." The scarred man sneered. "Then you'll die with him." Blaster fire erupted. The room filled with chaos, sparks flying, tables shattering. The alien girl moved like a storm, her weapon blazing, her body a shield. She cut down the first attackers with ruthless precision, her eyes burning with fury. She was outnumbered, but she never wavered. She fought with the strength of someone who carried not just her own life, but his as well. The old man tried to move, his cane trembling in his grip. His body was weak, but his voice still carried the echo of command. "Move to the back," he shouted. The girl obeyed without hesitation, guiding him toward a side passage while holding back wave after wave of enemies. The scarred man cursed as his plan fell into chaos. He had expected the old man to be helpless, but he had not counted on the girl's fire, her determination. She fought like 10 soldiers, her every strike driven by loyalty and rage. They burst through a side door, smoke and fire trailing behind them. The colony outside was chaos, civilians running, alarms blaring. The girl pulled him into the shadows, her breathing heavy, her armor scorched with burns. Blood trickled down her arm, but her grip on her weapon never weakened. The old man looked at her, his heart pounding. He saw the betrayal of his old comrades, the hatred in their eyes, and yet here she was, refusing to abandon him. She had not fought for her people alone. She had fought for him. "You should have left me," he whispered, his voice raw. She turned her head sharply, her eyes fierce even through the pain. "Never. You saved me when the galaxy turned its back. Now I save you." Her words struck him harder than any betrayal. In that moment, as fire lit up the colony sky, he understood something clear. His past was filled with shadows, but beside him stood the one light that refused to fade. And no matter how many enemies hunted him, she would not let him fall. The old man's hands were tied behind his back, the coarse rope biting into his thin wrists. He was forced to his knees on the floor of a dark chamber, lit only by the cold glow of hanging lights. His cane had been thrown aside, his body aching with every breath. Around him stood guards armed with heavy rifles, their eyes sharp and merciless. At the far end of the chamber, on a raised platform, stood the enemy commander, a tall figure in black armor, his face hidden behind a polished mask that reflected the light like a mirror. "So," the commander's voice echoed through the chamber, deep and cruel. "The famous human captain, or what's left of him." He walked slowly toward the old man, each step deliberate, heavy with disdain. "You should have died years ago. Do you know how many of my brothers you humiliated with your defiance? Do you know how long we waited for this?" The old man lifted his head, his eyes weary but unbroken. "I don't remember you," he said quietly. "I only remember the civilians I saved. Their lives were worth more than your pride." The commander's hand clenched into a fist. "You disobeyed orders. You weakened your own kind by choosing aliens over humans. And for that, you will suffer." The guards struck the old man across the face, knocking him to the floor. Pain shot through his skull, his vision swimming, but he forced himself back upright. He would not give them the pleasure of seeing him broken. The alien girl was dragged into the chamber next, her armor cracked, blood staining her skin. Her hands were bound as well, but her eyes blazed with fury. When she saw the old man on the floor, she struggled violently, kicking at the guards until they struck her with their weapons. She fell hard, but she still lifted her head, glaring at the commander with pure hatred. "You'll regret touching him," she spat, her voice raw. The commander laughed, the sound cold and sharp. "This one is loyal, too loyal. She doesn't even see that she ties herself to a dying man. Tell me, girl, why do you follow him? Why protect this relic?" She bared her teeth. "Because he saved me when no one else would, and I will die before I let you harm him." The old man's chest ached at her words. Even in chains, she was a shield. Even broken, she stood taller than the rest. He wanted to tell her to stop, to save herself, but the guards dragged them both closer to the platform, forcing them to kneel side by side. The commander paced in front of them. "Your death will be slow, Captain, and hers will be a lesson to anyone who dares follow a traitor. I will erase your names from the stars." The old man's mind raced. His body was weak, his weapons gone, but his spirit refused to bend. He looked at the girl beside him, her face streaked with blood, but her gaze steady. She was ready to fight, even without hope. Something inside him stirred, the part of him that once commanded fleets, the part of him that led men into fire and brought them home. He could feel it returning, stronger with every heartbeat. Leaning slightly toward her, he whispered, "When the moment comes, don't hesitate." She glanced at him, her eyes sharp with understanding. She gave a small nod. The commander raised his arm, signaling the guards. "Prepare them." The guards moved forward, their weapons ready. The old man waited, his breath steady, his pulse calm. He had learned long ago that even in defeat, timing was everything. And then the moment came. The commander stepped closer, his mask reflecting the old man's worn face. For just an instant, the guards loosened their hold, believing their prey too weak to resist. The old man moved. With a sudden surge of strength, he swung his bound arms forward, slamming the rope against the edge of the guard's weapon. The rough cord snapped against the sharp metal, and his hands came free. Before the guards could react, the alien girl twisted, slamming her shoulder into one of them, knocking him off balance. She snatched his weapon with lightning speed and fired, cutting down two more before they could raise their rifles. The chamber exploded into chaos. Blaster fire lit the room with harsh flashes, the sound echoing like thunder. The old man grabbed his cane from the floor, swinging it with surprising force against a guard's knee. The man fell with a scream, and the old man took his weapon, firing at the nearest target. His aim was shaky but true, and the shot dropped the guard instantly. The alien girl moved like a storm, her every motion sharp and furious. She fought not for her own life, but for his. She shielded him, blocked shots meant for him, and carved a path through the enemy ranks. The old man followed, his heart pounding with a fire he thought long dead. For the first time in years, he felt alive in battle. Not because of the fight itself, but because he was not alone. The commander roared in rage, drawing a blade crackling with energy. He charged at the old man, his strikes heavy and merciless. The old man blocked with his cane, the force of the blows rattling his bones. He staggered, but before the killing strike could land, the alien girl slammed into the commander, her blade clashing against his. Sparks flew as the two warriors fought, their movements fast and brutal. The old man, breathing hard, raised the stolen rifle and aimed. His hands shook, his vision blurred, but he steadied himself with every ounce of will. The commander knocked the girl back, raising his weapon for the final strike. At that moment, the old man fired. The shot hit true. The commander froze, the crackling blade slipping from his grip as the energy drained from his body. He fell to the floor with a crash, his mask shattering against the ground. Silence filled the chamber. The remaining guards hesitated, then dropped their weapons, fear breaking their resolve. The alien girl rushed to the old man's side, her hands gripping his arm. "You're hurt," she said quickly, her eyes wide with concern. He gave a faint smile, blood at the corner of his lips. "Just tired," he whispered. "It seems I'm not finished yet." She tightened her hold, her eyes burning with fierce pride. "You are not finished at all, not while I stand." Together, they walked out of the chamber, leaving behind the broken mask of the enemy commander. The old man's body was weak, but his spirit was alive. The galaxy had tried to bury him, but with her by his side, he had risen once more. And this time, he knew. He would not face the darkness alone. The battlefield was silent after the storm. Smoke drifted in the air, carrying the bitter smell of burned metal and ash. The old man lay on the ground, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. His cane was broken beside him, his once strong hands trembling as he tried to hold on. Around him, the fallen bodies of enemies and shattered weapons painted a grim picture of the fight that had just ended. The alien girl knelt at his side. Her silver skin streaked with blood and dirt, her armor cracked from the struggle, yet her eyes never left him. He coughed, his voice rough, almost fading. "Looks like this is the end of the line for me." Her hand gripped his tightly, refusing to let go. "No, don't say that. You are not finished. Not while I still breathe." He gave a faint, tired smile. "I've been finished for years. I only lasted this long because of you. You carried me farther than I ever thought I could go." His eyes closed for a moment, but he forced them open again. "You're the future now. You have to live. You have to lead." Her throat tightened, but she shook her head fiercely. "I swore I would never leave your side. I will not start now. If you fall, I fall with you." The old man's heart ached at her words. He had heard soldiers speak of loyalty before, but never like this. Not with such fire, such devotion. Slowly, with great effort, he lifted his trembling hand and brushed it against her cheek. "You were just a child when I found you. And now you're stronger than I ever was. You don't need me anymore." Tears filled her eyes, but she leaned closer, pressing her forehead to his. "I will always need you. You are the reason I fight, the reason I live." The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. Survivors from the colony and a few frightened soldiers stepped cautiously into the ruined hall. They stared at the sight before them, the alien girl kneeling beside the human veteran, her head bowed as if guarding a fallen king. Some whispered, others simply watched in silence. The old man's voice grew weaker, but his words still carried weight. "Listen to me, all of you." His eyes moved to the faces in the crowd. "I was called a traitor. I was stripped of my rank, but everything I did to save lives. Not human lives, not alien lives. Lives! All of them. Don't let hate blind you. Don't let the past bury the truth. The hall fell silent, his words sinking into every ear. The alien girl's grip tightened on his hand, as if trying to keep him anchored. "Rest now," she whispered. "You've carried the burden long enough. Let me carry it from here." He smiled faintly, his breath shallow. "It's an honor to see what you've become. You are my victory." His eyes fluttered shut. For a moment, it seemed as though the fire had gone out forever. The alien girl's chest shook as she pressed her face against his shoulder. She whispered the same words she had spoken when they first reunited. "It's an honor to serve you again, Captain." But then, a faint movement stirred beneath her hands. The old man coughed weakly, his chest rising once more. His eyes opened, tired but alive. "I'm not gone yet," he rasped with a hint of stubborn pride. Gasps filled the hall. The alien girl let out a broken laugh of relief, tears streaking down her cheeks. She helped him sit upright, holding him carefully as though afraid he might slip away again. "You stubborn old man," she whispered, her voice trembling. He chuckled faintly, though it made him cough. "Takes more than a beating to stop me." The crowd began to step closer, no longer filled with fear, but with something else, respect. They had seen his defiance, his survival, and his bond with the alien girl who would not leave his side. Some knelt, lowering their heads. Others whispered words of loyalty. The story of his fall had twisted over the years, but now, before their eyes, they saw the truth. He was no traitor. He was a man who had chosen compassion over orders, and this warrior standing beside him was living proof of it. The alien girl stood tall, her arms steady around him. Her voice carried over the crowd, strong and unwavering. "He saved us when no one else would. He carried honor when the galaxy tried to strip it away. If you have any respect for truth, then stand with him, not as humans or aliens, but as people who owe him a debt of life." The crowd stirred, and one by one, they bowed. Not to a government, not to a title, but to the man and the bond he shared with her. The old man looked at them with weary eyes. He never wanted to lead again. He never wanted to hold power. But in that moment, he realized something important. His legacy was not medals, not titles, not history books. His legacy was alive in her, in the lives he saved, and in the people who now looked to him with respect instead of shame. The alien girl helped him to his feet, supporting his frail body as they walked together out of the broken hall. The colony stretched before them, damaged but alive, its people waiting with hope in their eyes. He leaned on her for strength, his voice low but steady. "I thought my story was over. But maybe it was only waiting for this ending." She looked at him with fierce devotion. "No, Captain, this is not the end. This is the beginning of your legacy, and I will carry it with me, wherever I go." As they stepped into the fading light of the battlefield, side by side, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. An old man once called traitor, and an alien girl once called helpless, walking forward together. The past had tried to break them, but the bond they shared had turned into something unshakable. And though his body was weak, his spirit burned brighter than ever, carried by the loyalty of the one who refused to let him fade into the shadows.